Look, Pim, I know it's our job to help this guy and everything, but I think this guy's a lost cause. He's obviously made up his mind. Why don't we just cut our losses and get out of here?
Disney's Cruella is no different from the other Disney live-action remakes. I've seen the average score for it on Letterboxd. I know some of you hooligans think this movie is good. Well, I'm here to tell you that that's just not the case. To say Cruella is a good movie that represents the spirit of the character would be like saying the Star Wars sequels were any good at representing the legacy of the original trilogy. Actually, speaking of Star Wars, to give a more specific example, this is literally just Solo, a Star Wars story all over again. Yep, remember how dumb of an idea that was, and the most positive thing people could say about this movie was a collective meh? Well, that movie had the excuse of having production troubles for how bad it turned out. What's this movie's excuse? Alright, I've probably already pissed a lot of you off, and the dislikes are going up even though YouTube took them away. So, I think it's time I explain myself and why I not only hate this movie, but that I really hate it. So sit back and relax, and let me tell you about why Cruella just doesn't work no matter how you look at it. Spoilers ahead, but trust me, that does not matter in the slightest. So when you look at this movie on the surface, it's pretty much just an origin story for the character of Cruella de Vil. She's young, she hasn't established herself as a legit threat to the Dalmatians, she's just a quirky fashion designer who hasn't gotten her Catwoman origin yet. Now I don't mean to brag, but I like to consider myself a prequel expert. I've seen many a prequel in my day, and 98% of the time, they suck. From the Star Wars prequels to the Fantastic Beasts movies, to even goddamn Kermit the Frog getting a before movie, prequels are often very difficult to pull off. But all of these terrible prequels have one thing in common. They're not telling the right story. One of the biggest issues prequels have is trying to make you care. I mean, why else are we watching these stories if not to learn more about either the characters or the settings we're familiar with? A common trap these movies fall into is just making references to the original movie and winking towards the camera whenever they mention something that's gonna happen later on. Meanwhile, nothing in the current story is interesting enough to make you care, so you feel like you're wasting your time. If a movie is hellbent on making you care about stories or characters you already love, and it can't do a good job at it, then something is seriously wrong. The best prequels are always interested in expanding the lore and characters in great ways. The Dark Crystal Age of Resistance explores the world of Thrawn and gives great backstories to its previously established characters, while also balancing it out with interesting new characters, so that when you go back and watch the original Dark Crystal, you're given a brand new appreciation for the world and lore. X-Men First Class is a good example of setting up a universe as well. It's no secret that the X-Men movie timeline is royally fucked and will go down in history as the worst film timeline to follow ever, but that doesn't mean there aren't nuggets of gold hidden throughout. First Class is a great jumping off point for this universe. Hell, it was my jumping off point. I had never watched an X-Men movie prior to watching this. It established characters really well to the point that I understood who was who and what their motivations were. It also gives everyone time to get to know each other and grow relationships. It's such a good prequel, I kinda think it's better than the original X-Men trilogy. And the best part about both of these is, you can watch them separate from their respective franchises. You can watch First Class and Age of Resistance all on their own and still get a satisfying story. A ton of prequels can't even do that. They sometimes rely too heavily on having you as an audience member be familiar with the source material. Obviously, that should be par for the course. I mean, what the hell are you doing watching an X-Men prequel without having watched the original movies? Well, like I said, I had never watched the originals, but I still was able to follow First Class pretty well. So while a good prequel works for the fans, a great prequel works for everyone. You never know how someone is going to discover a franchise. So that's all well and good, but if that's what makes a good prequel, what makes a bad one? Well, as I said, when the prequel is telling the wrong story. I said the Star Wars prequels and Fantastic Beasts movies fail as prequels because they're telling stories no one cares about. We didn't need an origin story for Darth Vader or how the Empire came into power. We also didn't need a 5-part movie series detailing past events in the Harry Potter universe that are barely mentioned in the original movies. These stories are fluff, they don't matter in the long run. Now maybe you could make the argument that they could still be fun movies, and it ultimately doesn't matter if they're filler. In which case, sure, I can see that. I still think the Star Wars prequels are shitty movies, but I still have fun watching them. And I'm extremely curious to see Harry Potter as a franchise burned to the ground at the hands of its dipshit creator. But at the end of the day, both of these series fail at what their intended purpose was, to tell an origin story for something in their universes. Cruella falls into the same trap. It fails as a prequel because it doesn't do a good job at establishing a cohesive origin for the character. First off, let's get to the painfully obvious reason why this movie doesn't work. They made an origin story for a dog killer. I'm not against the idea of trying to humanize villains and make them a little deeper than just, haha, I'm so evil, but it's fucking Cruella de Vil, the crazy psychopath that wanted to kill a shit ton of puppies and make them into a fur coat. Does that sound like someone you want to sympathize with or even just understand why they became so mad? I guess I'm in the minority, because if I was given the opportunity to learn every painstaking detail about a crazy person, I'd say, no thanks, please stay away from me. But even if there are some of you out there who are desperate enough to learn more about a character, let me tell you guys a little secret. A little life hack, if you will, for watching movies. It's called context clues, but for watching movies. See, when you watch the original animated 101 Dalmatians, you can easily tell how and why Cruella de Vil is the way that she is without having to watch a whole other movie. Not sure what I mean? Well, let's analyze a couple of scenes and I'll show you. From the very first scene we see Cruella, you can figure out what she's about. She just barges into their house uninvited and starts demanding to know where the unborn puppies are. Anita asks if that's a new coat she's wearing. She excitedly says yes. Then she says something interesting.
My only true love, darling. I live for furs. I worship furs. After all, is there a woman in all this wretched world who doesn't?
This is an important line. You may not have realized it, but this explains everything about Cruella. She's a spoiled brat who sees herself as the center of the universe. She drives like a maniac. She bursts into a house unannounced. She puts her cigarette butts out on a cupcake. She does all of these things. Why? Because she can. She has never been told no in her entire life. She can do anything she wants and she gets away with it because she's filthy, stinking rich. Cruella de Vil is an upper-class snob who loves being the center of attention. Her design even says all that. She's incredibly thin but has a monster of a fur coat giving her this notable size. She takes up the majority of the frame every time she's on screen. In about 2.5 minutes, this movie is able to establish this character as a crazy rich lady with no sympathy for anyone around her while also being kind of a marvel of a human being. She's insane, but she's also entertainingly insane. You just can't look away. Which then leads me to the second scene I want to analyze, her outburst. When the puppies are born, she's there immediately. It hasn't been 30 seconds when she bursts through the door demanding to take them, boasting that she'll pay anything for them. And what does Roger tell her? No. He says the puppies will never be taken from the mother. Not now, not ever. And this enrages Cruella. This is monumental in her eyes. She's not just being denied something. She is being denied something from someone she was just insulting a second ago. Someone she deems beneath her in social status and class and whatever else she judges people on. She was just making fun of the fact that Roger and Anita will never afford to take care of 15 puppies. And now those very same people have the audacity to deny her what she sees as rightfully hers. These two scenes are crucial in establishing Cruella's character, showing that she's an eccentric rich lady and that she's got a dark side. The next scene we see after her outburst is when the puppies are kidnapped by Jasper and Horace, and the scene after that confirms that she was behind the kidnapping, which probably leads you to realize something. Hey, this lady is crazy, and weird, and overall psychotic. She doesn't see anything wrong with kidnapping an entire family of puppies for whatever she deems important. Why, she doesn't sound sympathetic at all. If you have realized this, then congratulations, you've realized that she's the main antagonist of the fucking movie. She's a villain, a criminal, she's a menace to this entire city. If she doesn't scare you, no evil thing will. To see her is to take a sudden chill. Cruella de Vil, there's a fucking song made about how evil she is. To make a movie explaining why she is the way that she is would be unnecessary. Not only do I not want to watch a movie trying to defend a crazy rich person with too much time on their hands, but in just 2 small scenes, I'm able to understand what she's about and why she does the things that she does, without having to watch said dumb movie. It's not greatly detailed, and a lot of it does leave a lot up to the imagination, but hey, remember, she's the villain. The movie isn't about her, it's about the goddamn dogs. That's why it's called 101 Dalmatians. But let's say for the sake of argument, I was deranged enough to want to learn more about this psycho bitch than what was already obviously established. Does Cruella actually do a good job at establishing this infamous character? Well, like I said, no. It humanizes Cruella to be this poor unfortunate soul who has the saddest backstory and that society is to blame for the way that she is. Okay. That sucks. Not only is that a cliched sob story, but it's also not the origin I imagined for this character. Which brings me to my next point. This isn't an origin for this character, nor is it for this one. Because like I said, Cruella is a snobbish, rich asshole. Those are kinda hard to make likable, let alone relatable enough to be a main fucking character. I'm not saying it's impossible to make a rich person the protagonist for a movie, but it takes a lot more than I'm assuming a live-action Disney remake is willing to do to make it believable. Which means we don't get an origin for this version of Cruella, nor this version of Cruella. We get an entirely different version of Cruella for this bland origin to work. Which leads me to what this movie actually is, another Disney remake. Cruella is a Disney remake through and through. First off, if it's not already made entirely obvious, it's impossible for this movie to be a prequel to either version of 101 Dalmatians. Cruella takes place in the 70s, a whole decade after when the animated movie takes place. And it also can't be a prequel to the 90s movie because none of the characters look like those versions. Emma Stone does not look like Glenn Close, and these actors look nothing like Roger and Anita. Roger isn't even British in the 90s movie, so this is clearly not an origin story for any established version of Cruella. This is a stone-cold reboot of the character. We're getting a brand spanking new version with more people of color and girl bossing and 70s music every 5 fucking seconds. And worst of all, something that really gets under my skin, numerous explanations. What do I mean by that? Well, remember in Solo, a Star Wars story, when we found out where Han Solo got his fucking name? Yeah, we got the origin of Han Solo's name. He wasn't just born with it like you'd assume with 99% of other characters in movies. No, he was given to it in a crucial scene that showed up in his origin movie. Disney thought out of all the things to explain Han's character, his fucking name was crucial enough to have its own scene. Well, times that by 101 and you've got the entirety of Cruella. I'm not kidding, the most mundane shit gets explained in this movie. Where she got her name, how she met Anita, how she got her black and white hair, how she got her goddamn car, how she met Jasper and Horace. Yeah, it turns out they're not hired goons, they're practically family to her. Odd change, but okay. And I'm not kidding here, I swear I'm not fucking kidding. I really wish I was joking, but I'm not. We even get an origin for her fucking evil laugh. Okay. Yeah, you know when she laughs like so many other evil villains? Turns out she got that from watching TV on a con job she was pulling. This, in my opinion, is way dumber than Solo getting his name from some random Imperial officer. Because really think about what this movie is saying. Not only did she not develop her evil laugh all on her own, she stole it from some random movie she just so happened to be watching at some random time in her life. It's not like she uses the laugh in the next scene, no, she just remembers it later on in the movie to use it then. How fucking convenient of her memory. That to me is what pisses me off the most about this movie. I could analyze every scene. I could tell you everything wrong with it a la Cinema Sins. I could also mention the fact that this movie tries to explain her distaste for Dalmatians comes specifically from the fact that a couple of Dalmatians push her mother off of a fucking cliff. And so that makes her sympathetic for wanting to murder a whole bunch of puppies even though we never once see her murder any puppies in the movie since she's the main character. And having your main protagonist murder dogs would be quite inappropriate for a Disney movie, meaning that just makes it such a pointless scene in the grand scheme of things. Or that the twist of the movie is that it wasn't her real mother who got pushed off of the cliff and in fact her real mother was the Baroness lady who never wanted anything to do with her. And it's just a gigantic coincidence that she ends up working for her and eventually ends up inheriting the Baroness's wealth when she frames her for murdering her timid Clark Kent version of herself. And so then she gets to live out the rest of her life as Cruella in Hell Hall with the Baroness's estate. And that this whole 2.5 hour long movie was entirely pointless in trying to come up with a Cruella origin when you remember that her real mother was the Baroness all along. meaning that she would have grown up and became the exact same person if she had remained the daughter of the Baroness and just became a rich and snobby asshole hell-bent on being the center of attention since she gets those traits from her mother, but that it wouldn't have made her sympathetic, therefore making it difficult to make her the protagonist. I could explain all of that, but it wouldn't matter, because this one scene of her watching a woman laugh on TV just ruins any indication that this is a character study I should take seriously. Even if you want to view this as a reimagining of the character, this is such a stupid scene to put into your movie. If this was an original character, it would still be incredibly ridiculous. So yeah, even as a remake, it fundamentally fails. Which leads me to my final point. Why the hell did I make this video? So after having to explain why this movie fails as both a prequel and a remake, how does this fare when compared to the other Disney live-action remakes? According to a shocking number of people, this is seen as one of the best live-action Disney remakes. Well, I disagree. Not only is it a failure at trying to recapture the magic of the Cruella de Vil character, or any magic of the 101 Dalmatians in general, but it's a convoluted and cliched sob story of an origin that isn't even that fun to watch all on its own. And yet, it's not even the worst. Yeah, after all my bitching and complaining, this movie isn't even the worst live-action remake of a beloved Disney classic. There are far worse movies than this one. I'd make the argument that movies like Lion King and Mulan are much worse movies and adaptations. Movies that fail even harder at understanding what made their original counterparts work so well. I will admit that after trudging through so many terrible Disney remakes, that Cruella isn't the worst one. But that doesn't mean that I think it's the best or that it's good. In fact, I would go as far as to say there is not a single Disney remake that is any good. All of them, fucking all of them, range from boring to downright unwatchable. The only one of them that's any better than its original is Pete's Dragon, and even then, that's only through specific circumstances. The original Pete's Dragon is annoying and corny and one of the lamest musicals I've ever seen, and that's saying a lot since I really don't like musicals. Whereas the 2016 remake, directed by the guy who made The Green Knight, is at best boring and monotonous. It's still a dumb movie, but at least it's a slight improvement over the original. Aside from that though, none of the other Disney remakes are worthy adaptations or reimaginings of the original animated movies. Not the ones that try something different, not the ones that try the exact same formula. It doesn't matter. They are all abject failures no matter how you look at them. Cruella stands out to me though, because, like I said, this is the second time Disney is trying to reboot the 101 Dalmatians story. Disney has so much faith in this franchise that they really wanted to try and bring this classic animated story to the real world again, and they still couldn't make it work. We like to make fun of Disney for being such lazy assholes, rehashing old successful films to pander to people's nostalgia and make a couple more bucks, but in a sort of paradoxical way, Disney is persistent in their laziness. Think about it. Rather than making something actually new and original, they decided to take an IP they've already shown in live action and do it again. They are so desperately creatively bankrupt that they would rather rely on a second reboot of something than trying to make something truly original. And we congratulated them hard. People ate this shit up and told Disney they did a good job. And it's gonna continue this way for a long fucking time. Just release a trailer with a famous Disney theme being played on a piano and watch those nostalgic tears with money in hands roll their way over to Disney Plus. Okay, I'm a little cynical there, I know. I've obviously made it clear that I really don't like this movie. In fact, I hate it with every fiber in my body. It fills me with such annoyance knowing that this movie was a huge success and that it's getting a sequel, which will just be 101 Dalmatians in live action. Again. So I guess I should end this video by saying that Disney is killing cinema and that I hate movies forever now, right? Well, not quite. If there's one thing I want you to take away from this video, it's to be smart when watching these live-action remakes. Obviously, this is never going to end, with Disney or Hollywood in general. They are going to keep remaking your favorite animated things into live-action garbage for the foreseeable future. I can't stop them, you can't stop them, they're inevitable. So with that, when you're watching the new live-action Pinocchio or the live-action Little Mermaid, just think about the movie you're watching. If you're enjoying them, are you actually having fun because of what the movie is doing, or are you having your nostalgic heartstrings pulled at? If you notice something different about this remake, is it beneficial for the story, or is it just there to differentiate itself from the original and in actuality makes the movie worse? And most importantly, I really can't stress this one simple bit of advice enough. If you come away enjoying the movie and wanting to jump the gun and say it's better than the original, or that it's worthy of any sort of praise, ask yourself this: am I going to remember this movie in 5 or 10 years' time? Am I going to feel the same way about this movie as I do with the original? For me, I can tell you right now that I will never forget the original animated 101 Dalmatians for as long as I live. As for Cruella, well, it's just another file on Disney Plus that I'll never willingly click on anytime soon.
This is madness! This is Sparta!